When Carrie first asked me to present, I wasn't sure why she wanted me to present. To be honest, it's great following a few really incredibly creative people up here. I don't consider myself one of the creative class. I am a dad and a husband, first and foremost. I work as an executive in a company at ProService, and I get a lot of my value of who I am from what I do also. I'm also a community volunteer and community member. And when Carrie asked me to talk today, I wasn't sure what I would talk about. And I think I'm just going to talk about my journey trying to become a more collaborative leader, both in my work, in my office, and in my family. In my work, in my family, and my volunteer activities. I was looking over the list of the Ceeds of Peace. I've been through this seminar and workshop about 2 years ago. I think maybe it was the second session that they had done. It's nice to see that there are so many people that are involved in this because I think it is really important. And I was looking through the list. I thought, wow, 7 Ceeds. I was amazed that they were able to come up with 7 C's that so perfectly fit this, and to hear that they came up with 30 is even more amazing. And I wanted to focus on the 3 that really meant the most to me, and they still mean the most to me because I'm still on my journey of developing into the leader and the person that I want to be. Those are courage, compassion, and community of the 7. And of those 3, courage has always been the most difficult for me. I grew up here in Hawaii, and I think it's a difficult place to be the nail who stands up in Hawaii. Pretty often you get pushed back down to be just like everybody else. And speaking up has always been a difficult thing for me to do, especially in a group of people where there aren't very many divergent views. And it's just always been hard to do that. So I'll talk a little about that journey for me and how to practice that and how I've tried to become better at it and still work at it. Then a little bit about compassion, and compassion not just with others, but compassion for yourself and how I've learned compassion and be forgiving of myself, which I think is really important in leading others. And then lastly, community, just referencing that higher purpose to bring other people together. I mentioned courage. It's always been the most challenging for me. I grew up right down the road here in Waipahu. It's actually nice to come down to this side. It is a little bit surprising that I'm used to growing up in a really hot environment, and being in this icebox has been really difficult for me. So if I'm wringing my hands, it's because I'm actually freezing. I think some people are born courageous or stupid. They raise their hand, they'll say anything they want. But I think for many people it doesn't come naturally. And I do think that to be a leader, to collaborate with others, to bring people together, you do have to be courageous to raise your voice. And it's something that even if it doesn't come naturally to you, it can be developed with practice. It's something that I try to practice every day. And again, I think growing up in Hawaii in our cultural context, and there is a ready-made kind of class system in Hawaii. It's ethnic-based, it's race-based, and when you grow up within it, you don't even realize what it's doing to you mentally as you're growing up. And to be a member of, my grandfather moved here from the Philippines. He actually worked in the sugarcane fields in Waipahu. And, I grew up there in a plantation home with my grandparents and my family. And so, you're naturally a conciliator and a compromiser, and not necessarily the person who raises your hand and speaks up. And so it's not easy, but if you want to do it, I encourage you to practice. And it's like a muscle. Through a program that I've been involved with for the last year, and Carrie's a member of it now, Open Year Fellows, we were lucky enough to be given coaches. And I talked to my coach about how I wanted to be more honest and open in the way that I communicate with others, with my family, with my coworkers, with my boss, with people who work for me. Difficult conversations have always been a struggle. And he asked me to do one thing or 3 things every day, and that's just ask people for things. Really, really simple things. If I am, at the coffee shop and my coffee is a little bit off, ask for another one. it's not that hard to do. And when you practice asking for things, you're practicing speaking up, you're practicing kind of tapping into what you really want and need, and being able and verbalizing and voicing that. And that's actually helped me. It's something that I try to do every day, even in small ways, and it's been helpful for me. Probably the most impactful, though, for me has been, of the C's, has been compassion. Compassion for myself in addition to compassion for others. I think if you're here, you are naturally a compassionate person, certainly for others. I think that in many cases, we are not compassionate with ourselves. I think we're much more forgiving of other people and their faults than we are of our own. I know that, like many people, I've kind of grown up with the tyranny of perfection, meaning to prove to people that I am perfect and that, I can do everything, I can be everything, and it's just not true. There's nothing that teaches you more about imperfection than being a father. A husband is close, but being a father is much, much harder. I'll tell you a quick story. Just last weekend, we were going to be in a rush. I was going out to walk the dog. My kids all had soccer games, and I told them, "Be ready when I come back. I'm going to walk the dog. I'll come up and get you, and we'll leave." And when I got back from walking the dog, they were out on the curb. They all had their bags. They were fully dressed. They were totally ready to go. But I didn't have my keys. They had closed down the house, they had locked everything up, and I left my keys in the house. And I got so mad, I actually yelled at them. I said, "What are you doing? Why are you..." And then I realized they did everything perfect. They had their stuff together, they were at the car, they were ready to go. I had not told them I left my keys in the car, and it was my fault, right? I was angry at me and not at them. And it took me a little while to calm down and to realize that, hey, and I told them, "I'm really sorry. I made a mistake." And it's a really difficult thing and a humbling thing to do to children, to say, "I'm really sorry. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have gotten angry at you, and I apologize for that. I love you all very much, and I'm really sorry." And being able to do that, I think, is a freeing thing, not just with family, but with friends, with your spouse, with people at work. And it's about giving yourself the same amount of grace that you would give to others when they make mistakes. Because I think we're all very good at forgiving everyone else. And I think the key point to get there, to have this compassion for yourself, is really genuinely appreciating your own strengths and your own weaknesses. I've been through a very introspective process over the last month, learning about those. And I always had focused on my weaknesses as a person and as a leader. And it was harder for me to kind of figure out what my strengths were and then balance those with my weaknesses. And, what I found is I've got a few really strong, really big strengths, and there are mirrors of those that are my weaknesses. And to live with those and to really honor those in myself have probably been the most important part of my development as a person, certainly in the last year. I think, you can take assessments and things like that to find out what your strengths and weaknesses are, but I think if you speak to people who really love you, people who tell you the truth, you can find out what those are pretty quickly. You just have to get yourself to believe them. I'd encourage everyone here to talk to someone, a good friend or a family member, a coworker, and ask them really, really honestly, what are the things I'm really, really good at, and what are the things I'm really not good at. And I just need to understand in order to make myself a better person, a better leader, to be able to be more able to bring other people together authentically. And when I did this for myself, I found out that one of my greatest strengths is I'm a great, not a compromise, but a coordinator, bringing people together to talk through issues. But the flip side of that is I'm very much a conflict avoider. And if people are angry, I have a really hard time kind of navigating that conversation. And it's something that I've had to work with. But realizing it's a weakness has helped me to get better as well. I also realized that I'm a really good initiator of things. Like, I will get an idea and I'll start something up. I'm a terrible finisher. Really good starter, terrible finisher. And that's a powerful thing to know as well, because it helps me to realize who I need to have on a team to actually get things done. I need people like Carrie, who are great finishers. And I'm really independent. Oddly enough, if someone's worldview is different from mine, I can pretty easily just strike my own path and not worry too much about it. But the negative of that is I can ignore valid feedback also as a leader. So I need people who are constantly bringing me back to reality. And knowing these things about myself and really deeply understanding them, I actually have a one-page document that I wrote for myself about my strengths and weaknesses. And I go back to it. It used to be every day for a short period of time, just to remind myself, that's who I am, and that's okay, right? That's who I am, and that's okay. And then it became once a month, and now I go back to it maybe once a quarter, depending on what I have going on in my life and in my work. And I think it's really important to just have that really honest but loving look at yourself, at what you're good at and not good at. And I think I'm just a much happier person than I was in the last 15 months, because I'm not worried about having to do everything perfectly. It's interesting, I recently had breakfast with a really good friend of mine. She's a successful executive, she's a great mom, she's a great wife, she's a terrific friend, and she was just carrying this sadness around with her. It was triggered by the passing of a mutual friend, and so we went on and talked about it. And at first I thought she was just carrying guilt about having lost this person, not spending enough time with him. And then I realized she just carried a lot of sadness with her in general. And the nature of it was that she just never felt like she was good enough. She was super successful. I mean, she's a vice president at First Hawaiian Bank. She helps a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people. She does a lot of volunteering. She's a great mom. She coaches softball. Like, she's a terrific person, but she's just really sad because she doesn't feel like she's good enough. And that, to me, was just it's a complete tragedy when I see things like that. And so I'm, trying to get her to realize what a great person she is, and that being a great person is plenty good. There are bad people out there, and if you're a great person, wow, that's awesome. And then the third C that's really important to me is collaboration. And this comes after getting to know who you are and getting to know your strengths and weaknesses, and the realization that there's no perfect person and there's no perfect leader. And the best leaders are able to lead authentically from their own unique strengths and weaknesses and being comfortable with that. And then bringing people together that complement their weaknesses and challenge them to sharpen their strengths. And that has helped me immeasurably in building teams at work, because I work for a very kind of dynamic and aggressive company. In the volunteer work that I do, I serve on a board with Carrie, where we've literally assembled an all-star group of people that are trying to move mountains for a small independent school. And the ability to bring in people that I know and we know as a group will complement our skills is essential to making anything really significant happen. I think if you broaden that look out to what Hawaii's problems are and the opportunities to really change how we will live our lives and the quality of our lives in the next 20 or 30 years. They're big, messy, they call them wicked problems. They're going to take dozens or even hundreds of people to fix them. There's no silver bullet for any of that stuff. That kind of collaboration is going to be absolutely essential. A little story about this too, and it goes back to my company. There was a person in the company about 3 years ago, and we were set up intentionally as rivals, which is not healthy. I do not encourage any of you to do this in any organization that you're with. Set two people up with parallel roles to be rivals. In the end, he kind of, we just didn't really get along well. He kind of left the organization due to some other circumstances. But what I realized about a year ago was that he actually had really complementary skills. The reason why we didn't get along is we're completely different people. And the things that he could do really, really well were things that I was absolutely terrible at. And I think in some ways I pushed against him when he was working with me the first time because I saw how different we were, right? And that difference to me was a threat at that time. And then about a year ago, he was looking for another opportunity, and we brought him back to the company. And he came to work in my team, and he's been an incredible asset to the company. He's grown a lot, I've grown a lot. I think we've both done this, self-realization process of figuring out what we're good at and not good at. And, realizing that has made me a better person, I think, made me a better leader, and also made our organization stronger. The last thing I want to talk about was diversity and how the Ceeds celebrate diversity. I think if you don't like or believe in diversity, you're already in the wrong place. Hawaii pretty much defines it for the rest of the world, and I think everyone here knows that. And it's not that it's important, it's omnipresent, and we don't just celebrate in Hawaii, we live it. And I'll kind of close with this one thought, which I think diversity is very much akin to genetics. And unless there's a competition for ideas, narrow, frail, and flawed ideas persist. You see that in genetics too, with inbred populations and purebred dogs. They just have a lot of health issues, and it's just not meant to be that way. Nature loves diversity. And I think to move forward, we have to think about it in that way. And instead of carving ourselves out with these little slivers of groups that have divergent opinions, we've got to make the tent bigger and bring people together and figure out a way to have those really open, collaborative conversations where we are listening and respecting the views of others and moving forward. And I think that if you get a homogenous group of people together, whether it's gender, race, socioeconomic class, education, income, or wealth, if you get a homogeneous group of people together in a room, they really quickly convince themselves of bad decisions. It happens very, very fast. And a forum like this, where we bring in a diverse group of people, is really important to, I think, where our state is headed, and where each of us should be trying to take our families, our organizations, the people that we volunteer with, and I just wanted to close with that final thought. So, thanks.